He pulls me close, using his wife's illness as an excuse. Yet on his body, I see the violent scratch marks and bruises of someone else. Behind the locked phone and the mask of piety, who is this man really? My lover or a terrifying imposter? How did a simple social media message weave such a destructive web of deceit? Why did a vulnerable divorcee unknowingly step into a trap carefully laid by a married man, a trap with no way out? What is the dark secret behind those scratch marks hidden under the guise of church and prayer? And where does it all end? In marriage or just exploitation and a tragic betrayal? I'm Sneha, and I'm here with you today to uncover this mysterious and breathtaking story of a life in turmoil. Let's not wait any longer. Let's dive deep into the story and find out exactly what happened. The rain was tapping against the window pane of my small apartment, a rhythmic, hypnotic sound that usually helped me drift off. But tonight, sleep felt like a distant country I couldn't find a map for. The room was dark, save for the solitary, glowing rectangle in my hand, my phone. It was the only window I had left to the outside world, a world that felt increasingly disconnected from the quiet, suffocating reality of my life in this small, sleepy town, 3 hours away from Toronto. I am Jennifer, 34 years old, and if you looked at me from the outside, you would see a woman who seemed to have things under control, but inside I was hollowed out. It started on a Tuesday or maybe a Thursday. The days had begun to blur together, indistinguishable in their grey monotony. I was scrolling through Instagram, mindlessly letting my thumb glide over images of people living lives that seemed more vibrant, more colourful than mine. Perfect dinners, perfect vacations, perfect smiles. And then a notification slipped down from the top of the screen. A direct message. It wasn't from a friend. It wasn't a family member checking in. It was a stranger, a man named David. The message was simple, almost painfully generic. Hi. I didn't answer. Why would I? In the digital age, a hi from a stranger usually meant a scam, a bot, or someone looking for a cheap thrill. I swiped it away, locking my phone and tossing it onto the empty pillow beside me. The pillow that had been empty for a long time now. I turned over, pulling the duvet up to my chin, listening to the wind howl outside. The Canadian winter was approaching and the draft from the window felt colder than usual. But the next day there was another one. How's your day going? And the day after that. You have a beautiful smile in your profile picture. He was persistent but not aggressive, just there. Like a faint background noise you eventually stopped trying to tune out. I don't know what changed. Maybe it was the silence of my apartment that evening. Maybe it was the way the shadows stretched across the floor, reminding me that I hadn't spoken to a real human being about anything other than work in weeks. I typed back, thanks. Who is this? That was the moment the door cracked open, just a sliver, but it was enough. We started talking. At first it was superficial. He asked about my hobbies, my town, the weather, safe topics. He told me he lived in Toronto working for a large corporate firm. He spoke of the city lights, the busy streets, the energy of downtown, things that felt like a lifetime away from my quiet existence. His messages were polite, articulate, and surprisingly attentive. He didn't push for inappropriate photos. He didn't use slang. He seemed mature, stable. Slowly, the rhythm of my nights changed. Instead of staring at the ceiling, I found myself waiting for the screen to light up. The blue light became my hearth, the only warmth in the room. We moved from casual pleasantries to deeper conversations faster than I expected. It's strange how easy it is to strip your soul bare to a stranger you've never met. There is a safety in the screen, a shield that makes you feel brave. About 2 weeks in, the conversation shifted. I asked him a question I should have asked on day one. Are you single? There was a pause. The 3 little dots that indicated he was typing appeared, then vanished, then appeared again. My heart did a strange little flutter, not of excitement, but of anxiety. No, he wrote, I'm married. I remember staring at the word married. It should have been the end. I should have blocked him right there, thrown the phone aside and gone back to my lonely, honourable life. But I didn't. I needed to know why a married man was spending his nights talking to a stranger 3 hours away. He continued before I could reply, but it's complicated, Jennifer. It's not what you think. And then came the story. A story that was woven with such sadness, such resignation, that I found myself softening. He told me they had been married for 10 years, 10 long years, and yet no children. He painted a picture of a house that was large, expensive, and utterly empty. She doesn't live with me, he typed. She's studying in another city. She's different. She has a temper. Sometimes I think she's not mentally well. It's like walking on eggshells. He described a life of isolation that mirrored my own. A wife who was distant, focused only on her academics, refusing to have children until she was ready, leaving him alone in a tower of success in Toronto. He told me he was lonely. He told me he was just keeping a promise to put her through school, a sense of duty that bound him like chains. We are married on paper, he said, but I haven't had a partner in years. It was a trap. I know that now. But in the quiet of that night, with the rain still falling, it sounded like a confession from a kindred spirit. I felt a pang of sympathy. Here was a successful man trapped by his own morality, suffering in silence. It made me want to share my own scars. If he could be this vulnerable, why couldn't I? I told him about my divorce. I told him about the years I spent as a caregiver, not a wife. My ex-husband, he wasn't a bad man, but he was broken. Physically broken. He suffered from a severe seizure disorder. It wasn't his fault, but the disease consumed everything. It consumed his ability to work, his ability to be a partner, and eventually it consumed me. I typed out the memories I tried so hard to forget. The nights spent in hospitals, the financial strain of being the sole provider, the exhaustion of coming home from work only to start a second shift of caretaking, the seizures that would strike without warning, leaving me terrified and helpless. I told David how I had lost my youth to that marriage, how I had given everything until there was nothing left of me to give. I walked away because I was drowning, I wrote to him, and now I'm free, but I'm alone. David's response was immediate and filled with a warmth I hadn't realised I was starving for. You are incredibly strong, Jennifer. You've been through so much. You deserve to be taken care of now. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to be taken care of. Those words settled deep in my chest. For years, I had been the one taking care of everyone else. The idea that someone, somewhere, thought I was worthy of care, it was intoxicating. Our conversations grew longer. They stretched from the early evening into the deepest parts of the night. He became the first voice I wanted to hear in the morning, or rather the first text I wanted to read. We hadn't spoken on the phone yet. He said he couldn't call often because of his wife. Even though she was in another city, she was possessive, paranoid. She would video call him at random hours to check if he was in his room, if he was alone. She's crazy, he would say. She tracks me. I have to be careful. Instead of finding this suspicious, I found it thrilling. It added a layer of forbidden secrecy to us. We were two lonely souls, finding solace in the cracks of a broken system. I began to view his wife not as a victim of his infidelity, but as the villain in our story, the crazy woman who didn't appreciate the man she had. He started sending me links, job postings in Toronto. Why are you rotting away in that small town? He asked one night. You're smart. You have experience. Come to the city. Come to Toronto. I can help you. I looked around my dim bedroom, the peeling paint in the corner, the silence that pressed against my ears. Toronto felt like a dream, a neon-lit escape. And David was the lighthouse guiding me there. I can't just leave, I replied, though my resolve was weakening. My family wouldn't understand, and I don't have a place to stay. We'll figure it out, he promised. Just apply. See what happens. I started looking at the links he sent. LinkedIn profiles, corporate websites, gleaming glass towers where people wore suits and drank expensive coffee. I began to imagine a life there. A life where I wasn't the divorced girl with the sick ex-husband. A life where I was just Jennifer. And somewhere in that picture, standing in the shadows of a skyscraper, was David. He never sent me photos of his life outside of selfies. Close-ups of his face. Handsome, clean-shaven, with eyes that seemed kind. He never showed me his apartment. Never showed me his friends. Privacy, he said. I'm a private person. I respected that. I admired it. In a world of oversharing. His mystery felt like dignity. One night, the conversation turned darker, heavier. The air in my room felt thick. I wish you were here, he texted. I'm sitting in my living room and it's so quiet. I just want someone to sit with me, just to exist with me. My heart ached for him. I knew that silence. I lived in it every day. I wish I was there too, I admitted. One day, he wrote, one day soon. You just have to be brave, Jennifer. I didn't know it then, but he was grooming me. He was carefully, methodically dismantling my defences brick by brick. He was analysing my weaknesses, my loneliness, my need for stability, my exhaustion from being the strong one. And he was positioning himself as the solution to every single one of them. He knew exactly what he was doing. As I lay in bed that night, the rain finally stopping, leaving behind a heavy, damp stillness, I looked at his last message. Good night, Jennifer. Dream of the city. I put the phone down, but the light from the screen lingered in my eyes. I felt a shift in the universe, a subtle tilt of the axis. I wasn't just chatting with a stranger anymore. I was falling. And the terrifying part was I didn't know if there was a net at the bottom or just a hard, cold pavement waiting to break me. But the seed was planted. The small town felt too small. The silence felt too loud. And the stranger in the screen was beginning to feel more real than the life I was actually living. I closed my eyes and for the first time in years, I didn't dream of the past. I dreamed of a skyline I had never seen and a man whose voice I had never heard. Little did I know the nightmare was disguising itself as a daydream and I was walking right into it, eyes wide open. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed with a sound that felt like it was drilling directly into my skull. It was a Tuesday, the kind of Tuesday that feels indistinguishable from the Monday before it or the Wednesday that would follow. I was sitting at my desk staring at a spreadsheet that hadn't made sense to me for the last hour. The numbers were blurring together, swimming in a sea of grey pixels. My office was a small, suffocating box in a building that had seen better days. The carpet smelled of dust and old coffee. Outside the window, the sky was a flat, oppressive white, promising snow that hadn't fallen yet, and it was the colour of boredom, the colour of a life stalled. Jennifer, the voice snapped me out of my trance. I didn't need to look up to know who it was. My manager, Mr. Henderson, a man who wore his authority like a cheap suit, ill-fitting and uncomfortable for everyone involved. I turned my chair. Yes? He dropped a stack of files onto my desk. The thud echoed in the quiet room. These need to be redone, all of them. The formatting is off and the client data isn't updated. I looked at the stack. I had spent the last 3 days working on those files. I had stayed late. I had skipped lunch. I followed the template you sent me, I said, my voice steady but tight. I double-checked everything. Well, check it again, he snapped, already walking away. And don't leave until it's finished. I don't care if it takes all night. Something inside me clicked. It wasn't a loud snap like a bone breaking. It was quiet, like a thread finally giving way after years of tension. I looked at the files. Then I looked at the clock. It was 12:15 p.m. lunchtime. I looked at my phone, sitting face down on the desk. The gateway to David. The gateway to Toronto. You deserve to be happy, he had said. You deserve to be taken care of. My hands started to tremble, not from fear, but from a sudden, overwhelming surge of adrenaline. I stood up. I didn't pick up the files. I picked up my purse. I picked up my phone. I walked out of the cubicle, down the hallway and past the break room where my co-workers were heating up leftovers in the microwave. I walked past the reception desk. Jennifer, where are you going? The receptionist asked, looking up from her magazine. I'm going to lunch, I said. But as I pushed through the heavy glass doors and the cold November air hit my face, I knew I wasn't coming back from lunch. I wasn't coming back at all. I walked to the park bench across the street, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. My fingers fumbled as I unlocked my phone and dialed the number. We had never spoken on the phone before, only texts. But this was an emergency. This was a crisis. Or maybe it was a liberation. The phone rang once, twice. Hello? His voice was deeper than I imagined, smooth, calm, with a cadence that instantly lowered my blood pressure. David! I breathed, my breath creating a cloud of white mist in the cold air. I can't do this anymore. I walked out. There was a pause on the other end. I was terrified he would tell me to go back, to be rational, to wait. Instead, he said the words that changed everything. Good, it's about time. I don't know what to do. I confessed, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. I just left. My stuff is still there. My jacket is on the back of the chair. Forget the jacket, David said, and his voice was firm, authoritative. Listen to me, Jennifer. Go home, pack a bag, just the essentials. Don't think about it. Just do it. Get on the next bus to Toronto. Today, the word felt heavy. Right now, he urged, why wait? What is there for you in that town tonight? Another frozen dinner? Another night staring at the ceiling? Come to me. I'll take care of everything. I'll take care of everything. It was the mantra I needed, the permission to let go of the steering wheel. I practically ran the 10 blocks to my apartment. The familiar streets looked different now, like a movie set being dismantled. I was already a ghost here. Inside my apartment, I moved with a feverish efficiency. I pulled my suitcase from the top of the closet, dust motes dancing in the afternoon light. I didn't pack everything. I couldn't. I packed like someone fleeing a natural disaster. Jeans, sweaters, my good boots, the few pieces of jewellery I owned, my laptop. I looked around the small living room one last time. The indent on the sofa where I sat every night, the stack of unpaid bills on the counter, the silence. I was leaving the silence behind. I didn't leave a note. Who would I leave it for? My parents were 3 towns over and wouldn't notice I was gone for days. My friends, well, since the divorce and the caretaking years, friends was a loose term. I was alone, and being alone made disappearing easy. The bus station was the concrete island on the edge of town. It smelled of diesel fumes and damp wool. I bought a one-way ticket. The clerk didn't look up, didn't ask why a woman with a suitcase looked like she was running for her life in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon. When the bus pulled up, a massive silver beast idling with a deep growl, I felt a moment of hesitation. My foot hovered over the first step. This was the threshold. Once I stepped up, there was no going back to the life I knew, the safe, miserable life. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from David. I'm tracking the bus schedule. I'll be there waiting. Don't be afraid. I stepped onto the bus. The ride was the blur of grey highways and barren fields. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass, watching the world slide backward. The rhythm of the tyres on the asphalt was hypnotic. Thump, 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 thump. It sounded like a heartbeat. As the hours passed, the landscape began to shift. The open fields gave way to strip malls, then industrial parks, then dense suburbs. The traffic thickened. Red taillights stretched out before us like a river of lava. And then I saw it, the skyline, Toronto. It rose from the horizon like a kingdom of glass and steel, piercing the low-hanging clouds. The CN Tower stood like a needle, stitching the sky to the earth. The lights were already flickering on as the afternoon faded into an early dusk. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It was massive. I checked my reflection in the darkened window. I looked tired, pale. My hair was a mess from the wind. I tried to smooth it down, a nervous energy bubbling in my stomach. Well, what if he didn't like what he saw? We had exchanged photos, but photos can lie. Lighting, angles, filters. Reality was high definition and unforgiving. The bus pulled into the terminal, navigating the tight corners of the underground bay. The air brakes hissed, a long, exhausted sigh. People began to shuffle, grabbing bags, putting on coats. I waited until the aisle cleared. My legs felt shaky as I stood up. I grabbed my suitcase and walked down the steps, stepping onto the concrete platform. The noise hit me first. Even underground, the city hummed. Voices, announcements, engines, the distant rumble of the subway. It was an assault on the senses after years of quiet. I walked into the main arrival hall. It was a sea of faces. Strangers rushing, hugging, arguing, waiting. I gripped the handle of my suitcase so hard my knuckles turned white. I scanned the crowd, my heart pounding in my throat. Where is he? Panic flared, cold and sharp. What if this was a joke? What if I was standing here, unemployed and homeless, waiting for a ghost? Then I saw him. He was standing near a pillar, slightly apart from the crowd. He looked exactly like his photos, maybe even better. He was wearing a dark wool coat, a scarf loosely draped around his neck. He looked polished, professional. He wasn't looking at his phone. He was looking at the passengers streaming out. His eyes locked onto mine. For a second, the noise of the station faded. It was just him and me. He didn't smile immediately. He studied studied me, his gaze sweeping from my boots to my face. It felt like an appraisal. Then the smile came. It was slow, warm and reassuring. He stepped forward, closing the distance between us. Jennifer, he said, his voice was real. Not a text, not a pixel. Sound waves vibrating in the air between us. David, I managed to whisper. He didn't offer a handshake. He didn't offer a polite hug. He reached out and took the handle of my suitcase from my hand, his fingers brushing against mine. His skin was warm. You made it, he said, his other hand coming up to gently touch my elbow, guiding me. I told you I'd be here. I can't believe I'm here, I said, my voice trembling. I just left. You did the right thing, he said, steering me toward the exit doors where the city lights were blurring in the evening rain. You're safe now. We walked out of the station and into the sensory overload of downtown Toronto. The skyscrapers loomed over us, giants watching our every move. The air smelled of wet pavement and exhaust and expensive perfume. I booked a car, he said, guiding me toward a sleek black sedan waiting at the curb. Not a taxi, a private car. As I slid into the leather back seat, the warmth of the heater enveloping me, I felt a wave of exhaustion crash over me. I had done it. I had escaped. David slid in beside me. The door closed, shutting out the noise of the city. It was quiet in the car, intimate. He turned to me in the dim light. I have a surprise, he said softly. I told you I booked you a place to stay. An Airbnb? I nodded. Yes, thank you. I can pay you back once He cut me off with a wave of his hand. Don't worry about that, but I was thinking it's your first night. You don't know the city. You're tired. You're stressed. He paused, his eyes searching mine in the shadows. Why don't you just come to my place tonight, he suggested, and the tone was casual. Helpful. I can cook for you. You can relax, and then I'll take you to the apartment tomorrow. It just seems cruel to drop you off alone in a strange room on your first night. My mind flashed a warning. He's married, his wife, the rules. But what about, but I trailed off. She's not here, David said quickly, anticipating the question. She's miles away, and honestly, I don't care anymore. You're here. That's what matters. He leaned in closer. I could smell his cologne, something woody and spicy. It was intoxicating. Come home with me, Jennifer, he whispered. I looked out the window at the passing city, a blur of motion and light. I was tired of being alone. I was tired of being brave. Okay, I said softly. David smiled and he leaned forward to tap on the driver's partition. Change of plans, he told the driver. We're going to the condo. The car merged into the traffic, carrying me away from the bus station, away from my past and toward a glass tower that touched the clouds. I leaned back against the seat, closing my eyes. I thought I was moving towards safety. I thought the hard part was over. I didn't know that the bus ride was just the beginning of the journey, and the destination wasn't a sanctuary. It was a cage, beautifully gilded, waiting for its bird to fly right in. The car glided to a stop in front of a building that looked less like a home and more like a monolith carved from ice and darkness. It was one of those ultra-modern towers near the waterfront, soaring so high up that the upper floor seemed to disappear into the low-hanging clouds. A doorman in a uniform that cost more than my entire wardrobe stepped forward to open the car door, nodding respectfully at David. Good evening, sir, he said, his voice hushed. Evening, Patrick, David replied smoothly, stepping out and extending a hand to help me. As I stepped onto the pavement, the wind off Lake Ontario whipped around us, biting and cold, but David's hand on my lower back was a radiator of warmth. He guided me through the revolving glass doors and into a lobby that smelled of white tea and expensive leather. The floors were polished marble, reflecting the recessed lighting like a calm black pool. It was silent, not the peaceful silence of nature, but the heavy, insulated silence of wealth. It's incredible, I whispered, feeling suddenly small in my worn-out boots and jeans. I clutched the strap of my bag tighter. It's just a building, David said, though there was a hint of pride in his voice. He led me to the elevators, pressing his key fob against a sensor. The doors slid open instantly. We rode up in silence. My ears popped as the numbers on the display climbed higher and higher. 10, 20, 30, 45. We were leaving the world behind. We were leaving the gritty reality of bus stations and office cubicles and entering the stratosphere. When the doors opened on the 48th floor, there were only 2 doors in the hallway. David walked to the one on the left, punched a code into a digital keypad, and the lock disengaged with a heavy mechanical thunk. Welcome home, he said softly, pushing the door open. I stepped inside and my breath hitched. The entire far wall was glass, floor to ceiling. The city of Toronto lay spread out below us like a carpet of diamonds. The CN Tower blinked in the distance, and the headlights of cars on the Gardiner Expressway were just ribbons of red and white light flowing endlessly. But the apartment itself was strange, beautiful, yes. The furniture was sleek, modern, low profile, a massive grey sectional sofa, a glass coffee table, abstract art on the walls that looked like storms trapped in canvas. But it felt cold. It felt staged. There were no personal photos, no knickknacks, no throw blankets that looked used. It looked like a page out of a catalogue, untouched by human life. "Let me take your coat," David said, moving behind me. He slid the coat off my shoulders with the familiarity that made me shiver. He hung it up in a closet that was meticulously organised. "Are you hungry?" he asked, walking toward the kitchen area, which was separated from the living room by a massive island of white quartz. "I assumed you hadn't eaten." I haven't," I admitted. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a gnawing emptiness in my stomach. "Sit," he commanded gently, pointing to a bar stool. "I'll make something simple. Pasta? Everyone likes pasta." I sat down watching him. He took off his suit jacket, draped it over a chair and rolled up the sleeves of his pristine white dress shirt. His forearms were strong, dusted with dark hair. I watched his hands as he moved, opening the fridge, chopping garlic, boiling water. He moved with precision. I felt a lump form in my throat. For the last 5 years, I had been the one doing everything. I cooked, I cleaned, I dispensed medication, I paid bills. My ex-husband would sit in his chair staring blankly, waiting to be served. I had forgotten what it felt like to have someone serve me, to have someone ask if I was hungry. "You have a beautiful place," I said, and trying to fill the air. Does she like it?" I didn't say her name. I didn't even know her name. The wife. David didn't look up from the cutting board. The knife hit the wood with a rhythmic chop, chop, chop. "She hates it," he said flatly. "She says it's too high, says the elevators make her dizzy. She prefers the ground. She prefers the quiet of the country where she studies. This is my space, Jennifer. When she's not here, which is almost always, this is my sanctuary." He turned to look at me then, his eyes intense. "And tonight, it's yours." He poured 2 glasses of red wine and slid one across the counter toward me. I took a sip. It was rich, velvety, and went straight to my head. By the time the food was ready, I was feeling a strange mix of exhaustion and intoxication. We ate at the island. The pasta was delicious. Simple, spicy, perfect. I ate like I hadn't seen food in days. "Slow down," he chuckled, reaching out to wipe a speck of sauce from the corner of my mouth with his thumb. His skin lingered there for a second too long. "You're safe. No one is going to take it away." After we ate, he didn't let me clean up. He guided me to the sofa, the one that looked out over the glittering city. "Just relax," he said. "Look at the view." I sat down, sinking into the expensive fabric. My body felt heavy. My eyelids were drooping. The stress of the day, the fight with my boss, the bus ride, the fear was crashing down on me all at once. David came over and sat next to me, close, his thigh pressed against mine. He wasn't looking at the view. He was looking at me. "You look tired," he murmured. "I am," I whispered. "I feel like I'm dreaming." "It's not a dream," he said. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His hand cupped my cheek. "You took a brave step today, Jennifer. I'm proud of you." Tears pricked my eyes again. "I'm proud of you." No one had said that to me in so long. I leaned into his touch. I couldn't help it. I was a plant that had been kept in the dark for years, and he was the sun. I naturally bent toward him. "Thank you for everything," I said. "For the ticket, for the food." "Shh," he silenced me. "I told you, I want to take care of you." He leaned in then. It wasn't a question. He didn't ask if he could kiss me. He just did. His lips were firm, tasting of wine. For a split second, the siren went off in my brain. "He is married. This is wrong. You just met him." But then his arms went around me, pulling me against his chest. He felt solid. He felt strong. And I felt so incredibly weak. I was drowning in gratitude and loneliness. I didn't have the strength to push him away. I didn't want to go back to the cold. I wanted this heat. I melted into him. The kiss deepened. His hands moved from my face to my waist, pulling me into his lap. "David," I gasped, pulling back slightly. slightly. We shouldn't. The Airbnb. I should go. Not tonight, he whispered against my neck, his voice rough. Stay here. Stay with me. The Airbnb isn't going anywhere. You don't want to go back out into the cold, do you? He knew the answer. He knew I was terrified of being alone in this massive city, and he was using my fear as a tether. No, I admitted, I don't. He stood up then, lifting me with him. He didn't lead me to the guest room. He led me down the short hallway to the master bedroom. The room was dark, illuminated only by the city lights filtering through the sheer curtains. The bed was huge, a king-size expanse of white linens. As we crossed the threshold, I saw something on the dresser, a bottle of perfume, a woman's perfume. It was sitting there, half full, catching the light, a stark reminder. I hesitated, looking at it. David saw my gaze. He didn't flinch. He walked over, opened the top drawer of the dresser and swept the perfume bottle inside, sliding the drawer shut with a definitive click. Forget about everything else, he said, turning back to me. Just be here. He began to undress me. His movements were practiced, confident. He unbuttoned my shirt, his fingers grazing my skin. I stood there passive like a doll. Part of me felt desirable, finally wanted after years of rejection. But another part of me felt like an observer watching a train wreck in slow motion. When he laid me down on the bed he shared with his wife, I stared up at the ceiling. It was smooth, flawless, white plaster. He lay over me, his weight heavy and real. You're so beautiful, he whispered. I've wanted this since the first message. The intimacy that followed wasn't like anything I had experienced with my ex-husband. It was intense, demanding. David took what he wanted. He was rougher than I expected, his hands gripping me tight as if he was afraid I would vanish if he let go, or maybe he was just claiming territory. I didn't say no. I couldn't. My mind was a fog of confusion and need. I let him love me, or whatever version of love this was. I let him use my body to anchor himself, and in return I used his body to forget that I was a runaway with no job and no future. Afterward, the room was quiet again. The silence returned, but now it felt different, heavier. David rolled over, pulling the sheet up to his waist. He checked his phone immediately. The light from the screen illuminated his face, stoic, unreadable. He wasn't cuddling. He wasn't whispering sweet nothings anymore. The transaction was complete. Set an alarm, he said, his voice void of the warmth that had been there an hour ago. I have an early meeting tomorrow. I'll drop you at the Airbnb on my way to the office. I lay there staring at the back of his head. The caregiver was gone. The corporate executive was back. Okay, I whispered into the pillow. I curled onto my side, facing the window. The city lights were still blurring, but they didn't look like diamonds anymore. They looked like thousands of watching eyes. My phone was in my bag in the living room. I felt a sudden urge to grab it, to call someone, anyone, but there was no one to call. As sleep finally began to pull me under, a thought drifted through my mind, uninvited and cold. He hid the perfume. He didn't throw it away. He just hid it. And in that moment, lying in a stranger's bed, smelling of his cologne and my own bad decisions, I realised I had just become exactly like that perfume bottle, something to be used when convenient and shoved into a dark drawer when the real world came knocking. I closed my eyes, but the darkness behind my eyelids wasn't peaceful. It was just dark, and for the first time I felt the walls of the trap closing in. The calendar on the wall of my small rented studio apartment became my enemy. It wasn't just a way to track the days anymore. It was a countdown to a recurring execution. And I'd been in Toronto for 3 months now. I'd had a job, a mid-level administrative role David had helped me secure through a friend of a friend. It paid the bills, barely. But my real life, my actual existence, only happened in the evenings, in the sleek glass-walled box of David's condo. We had fallen into a rhythm, a routine. I would leave work, take the subway to his district, and he would let me in. We would cook, we would drink wine, we would sleep together. It was domestic. It was almost perfect. Almost. But then the end of the month would approach, the final weekend. I learned to dread the sound of the zipper on his leather overnight bag, and that sound, the sharp metallic zip, was the sound of my world fracturing. It was a Friday evening in February. The city was buried under a fresh layer of dirty slush. The sky was already pitch black by 5 p.m. I was at David's place, sitting on the edge of the bed, watching him pack. He moved with that same terrifying efficiency he applied to everything. 3 shirts, 2 pairs of trousers, his shaving kit. He wasn't looking at me. He was focused on the task. It's just for 2 days, Jennifer, he said, sensing my stare. He didn't turn around. I'll be back Sunday night. Why do you have to go every month? I asked, my voice small. You said she hates you. You said she's crazy. He stopped, holding a folded sweater in midair. He turned slowly, his face composing itself into that mask of patient suffering he wore so well. It's a social obligation, he said, as if explaining tax law to a child. We have shared assets. We have families who talk. If I stop going, people start asking questions. If people start asking questions, they start looking at my life here. Do you want them to find you? The threat was subtle, wrapped in concern, but it was there. Do you want them to find you? He made me feel like a fugitive, like I was the criminal. No, I whispered. Exactly, he said, placing the sweater into the bag. I go there to keep the peace, to keep her calm. If I don't go, she starts calling my office. She starts calling my boss. I can't have that. He zipped the bag shut. The sound echoed in the quiet room. I'm doing this for us, he added. I walked over and kissed my forehead. It was a dry, perfunctory kiss. The kind a husband gives a wife he's bored with, which was ironic considering he was leaving his mistress to go see his wife. I have to lock up here, he said. You should head back to your apartment. That was the rule. When he was gone, I wasn't allowed to stay in the condo. I had to go back to my tiny, drafty studio in a cheaper part of town. The condo was his fortress. Without him, I wasn't granted entry. Okay, I said. We rode the elevator down in silence. He walked me to the street, hailed a cab for me. He didn't drive me. He was in a rush, and handed the driver a $20 bill. Be good, he told me through the open window. I'll text you when I can, but don't call me. You know the drill. And then he was gone. His black sedan merged into the stream of taillights, heading toward the highway, heading out of the city, heading to her. The weekend stretched out before me like a vast, empty desert. Saturday morning in my apartment was a study in silence. I didn't have internet yet to save money, and the TV only had 3 channels. I sat by the window watching the snow fall on the fire escape. My phone sat on the coffee table. It was the centerpiece of my anxiety. Don't call me! I imagined him. I couldn't help it. My mind was a traitor. I imagined him pulling into a driveway of a house I had never seen. I imagined a woman opening the door. Was she pretty? He said she was crazy, but crazy people could be beautiful. Was she waiting for him? Did she cook for him? I tortured myself with scenarios. By Saturday night, the silence was deafening. I felt like a ghost. I existed only when he observed me. When he looked away, did I even have a reflection? I checked his WhatsApp status online. My heart hammered. He was online. Who was he talking to? Not me. I couldn't message him. If I messaged him and she saw it, he had told me horror stories of her rage, how she would scream, break things, threaten suicide. I was terrified of triggering that, so I sat on my hands literally to stop myself from typing. He's miserable, I told myself. He's just enduring it. He's doing it for us. Sunday came slow and grey. I spent the day cleaning my already clean apartment. I scrubbed the grout in the bathroom until my fingers were raw. I needed to do something with my hands. I needed to scrub away the feeling of being the other woman. He had promised to be back Sunday night. At 8 p.m, my phone buzzed. I'm back. Come over. 3 words. No, I missed you. No, how are you? Just a command. And God help me, I went. I grabbed my coat and ran to the subway station like a dog hearing a whistle. When I got to the condo, he looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes. He had already poured himself a drink, a dark amber liquid. Whiskey or bourbon? His tie was undone, hanging loosely around his neck. Hey, I said, stepping inside. The air in the condo smelled stale, like it had been holding its breath for 2 days. Hey, he grunted. He didn't stand up to hug me. He just gestured to the sofa. Sit! I sat. I looked at him. I looked for signs of, what, a fight? A struggle? How was it? I asked cautiously. He took a long sip of his drink, the ice clinking against the glass. Exhausting! She talked for hours, complained about her professors, complained about the neighbours, complained about me not sending enough money. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. I felt sorry for him, trapped with a harpy. He looked at me then, his eyes unreadable. It is what it is. Then the question bubbled up, the question that had been eating a hole in my stomach for 48 hours. I shouldn't have asked it. I knew the answer would hurt either way, but I had to know. David, I started, my voice trembling. Did you sleep with her? The room went dead silent. The hum of the refrigerator seemed to amplify. David didn't look away. He didn't flinch. He swirled his drink, watching the liquid vortex. Jennifer, he said, his voice dangerously calm. I told you. It's a marriage. There are expectations. My stomach dropped. I felt bile rise in my throat. So you did, I whispered. If I don't, he said, turning to face me fully. She gets suspicious. She asks if there's someone else. She asks why I'm not interested. Do you want her to start digging? Do you want her to hire a private investigator? He was twisting it. He was making his infidelity to me, the mistress, sound like a heroic act of protection. But you said you hate her, I said, tears spilling over. You said you love me. I do love you, he said, his voice softening, but his eyes remaining cold. That's why I do what I have to do. It's just sex, Jennifer. It's a chore, like taking out the trash or paying the bills. It means nothing to me. My body was there, but my mind was here with you. He reached out and took my hand. His palm was warm, the same hand that 24 hours ago had been touching his wife. I wanted to pull away and I wanted to scream and run out of the apartment, but I didn't. I was frozen. Don't be childish, he said, seeing my hesitation. We are adults. We are dealing with a complex situation. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Don't make this harder. I swallowed the lump in my throat and I swallowed my dignity. Okay, I whispered. I understand. Good, he said. He finished his drink in one gulp and stood up. I don't want to talk about her anymore. I want to clear my head. Get your coat. Where are we going? I wiped my eyes. For a drive. I need to get out of this box. We went down to the garage and we got into his car. He drove fast. We got on the Gardner Expressway, heading nowhere in particular. The city lights blurred past us, streaks of gold and red. He turned up the music, smooth jazz. It filled the cabin, drowning out the silence between us. He didn't speak. He just drove, one hand on the steering wheel, the other resting on the gear shift. He looked relaxed now. The tension of the confession had left his body. He had unloaded his burden onto me and now he was light. I sat in the passenger seat watching his profile, the strong jawline, the focused eyes. Why don't you talk to me? I asked over the music. Why do we always just drive or do other things? Why don't we just talk? I talk all week at work, he said, eyes on the road. When I'm with you, I just want peace. I just want to exist. But I feel like I don't know you, I said. I know your body. I know your schedule, but I don't know you. He glanced at me, a flicker of annoyance in his eyes. You know everything that matters. You know I take care of you. You know I'm here. He reached into the back seat and pulled out a small paper bag. He tossed it into my lap. Here, he said, I got you something. I opened the bag. It was a box of chocolates, expensive ones. Thank you, I said, but it felt hollow. It felt like a payment. Here is your reward for accepting that I slept with my wife. Eat some chocolate and be quiet. I also saw some nice boots online, he said, changing the subject. Send me the link if you like them. I'll order them for you. He was buying my silence. He was buying my compliance. And the worst part was, it was working. We drove for an hour. He took me to the outskirts of the city where the lights were fewer and the darkness was deeper. He pulled into a scenic overlook that faced the lake. The water was black, invisible except for the sound of waves crashing against the rocks. He turned off the engine. The car went silent. He turned to me. I missed you, he said, and this time it sounded almost convincing. Being there with her, it drains me. You recharge me. He leaned across the console and kissed me. I tasted the whiskey on his breath. I tasted the desperation. I kissed him back. I hated myself for it, but I kissed him back because in that car, in the dark, he was mine again. The weekend was over. The ghost had returned to the grave and David was back with me. Promise me, I whispered against his lips. Promise me one day it will just be us. One day, he murmured. I promise. But as his hands moved over me, I felt a cold knot in my stomach that wouldn't go away. I realised that the social obligation wasn't just a visit. It was a reminder that I was the sidebar. I was the intermission. The main event, the legally binding reality was miles away, sleeping in a bed I would never see. And as I looked at him, illuminated by the dashboard lights, I saw something on his neck, just below the collar of his shirt. It was faint in the dim light, but it was there. A scratch. A thin red line. What is that? I asked, pulling back and touching the mark. He flinched, pulling away quickly. He adjusted his collar, covering it. Nothing, he said sharply. Shaving cut. The razor slipped this morning. A shaving cut on the side of his neck. It didn't look like a slice. It looked like a drag mark, like a fingernail. David, drop it, Jennifer, he snapped. The tenderness vanished instantly. I'm tired. Don't start interrogating me. He started the car, the engine roaring to life, drowning out my question. He put the car in reverse, tyres crunching on the gravel. We drove back to the city in silence, but the silence wasn't empty anymore. It was filled with that red line, that scratch. It's just sex. It's a chore. That's what he had said. But you don't get scratched doing a chore. You get scratched in a struggle or in passion. As we merged back onto the highway, the city of Toronto looming ahead like a fortress, I looked out the window and realised I wasn't just confused anymore. I was afraid. The weekend ghost hadn't just taken his time. It had taken a piece of his flesh. And I was beginning to wonder if the woman on the other end of that drive was really the fragile, crazy student he described, or something else entirely. I clutched the box of chocolates in my lap. They felt heavy, like stones. I was back in the warm trap, but the temperature was dropping fast. The iPhone sat on the white marble kitchen island like a sleek obsidian monolith. It was the latest model, the Pro Max titanium finish, 3 camera lenses staring up at the ceiling like unblinking eyes. It was beautiful, expensive, and it was the most hateful thing in my world. It was a Tuesday evening. David was in the shower. I could hear the water running, the muffled sound of him humming a tune I didn't recognise. I was chopping vegetables for a salad, but my eyes kept drifting back to that phone. It was always there, and it was always locked. In the 4 months we had been together, I had never seen his home screen. I didn't know what his wallpaper was. I didn't know what apps he had. Whenever he used it, he tilted the screen away from me, a subtle, practiced motion that felt as natural to him as breathing. If I walked into the room while he was texting, he would lock it instantly, sliding it into his pocket with a casualness that made it impossible to question without sounding crazy. Buzz! The screen lit up, a notification. My heart did a traitorous little flip. I stopped chopping. The knife hovered over a cucumber. I took a step closer, just one step. I wasn't going to snoop. I just wanted to see something, anything, a name, a preview. I leaned in. The screen was bright, but the notification was hidden. iMessage notification suppressed. And then, above it, the padlock icon shivered. Face ID required. It was mocking me. It was a digital fortress, impenetrable without his face. The face he claimed belonged to me, but which he hid behind layers of encryption. What are you doing? The voice was low, smooth, and came from right behind me. I jumped, the knife clattering onto the cutting board. I spun around. David was standing in the doorway of the bathroom, a towel wrapped around his waist, water droplets glistening on his chest. He wasn't smiling. His eyes were fixed on the phone, then they slid up to my face. Nothing, I stammered, my face flushing hot. It buzzed. I thought maybe it was important, an emergency. He walked over, his wet bare feet silent on the floor. He picked up the phone, not looking at it, but looking at me. If it's an emergency, they'll call twice, he said, and his voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. A warning. You know how I feel about privacy, Jennifer. I wasn't looking, I lied, feeling small. I was just standing here. Good, he said. He slipped the phone into the pocket of his robe, which was hanging on the chair. My phone is my office. It's my bank. It's my life. It's complicated. If you mess with it, you could trigger security protocols. My wife, she has alerts set up. If the passcode is entered wrong, she gets notified. She tracks your passcode, I asked, incredulous. She tracks everything, he said, turning his back to me to open the fridge. She's paranoid. She thinks I'm hiding assets. She thinks I'm hiding money. I told you, she's not well. He poured himself a glass of water, then turned back, his expression softening into that practiced mask of affection. I'm protecting you, Jen. If she finds out about you, she'll destroy you. She'll come after your job. She'll come after your reputation. The less you know about what's on this phone, the safer you are. It was the perfect defense. He wasn't hiding things from me. He was hiding things for me. It was gaslighting of the highest order, but I was too desperate to see the flame. I understand, I murmured. But I didn't understand. I didn't understand why, if he loved me, I was a dirty secret to be encrypted. A week later, the cracks in the glass began to spread. It was a rare, warm evening for March. The snow was melting and the city felt alive. I had begged him, literally begged him to take me out, not just for a drive, but out to walk among people. He had relented, reluctantly taking me to the distillery district. It was a beautiful, historic area with cobblestone streets and fairy lights strung overhead. It was romantic. It was the kind of place couples went to be seen. We were walking with coffee cups in our hands. I felt happy. For a moment, we looked like a normal couple. I was wearing a new coat I had bought on credit, trying to look the part of a woman who belonged next to him. We stopped near a large art installation, a giant red heart made of steel. Other couples were taking selfies, laughing, kissing. David, I said, feeling a surge of affection, let's take a picture. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. It was an older model. The screen cracked in the corner, but it had a camera. Come here, I said, raising the phone, smiling, tilting my head to get the red heart in the background. David reacted as if I'd pulled a gun. He ducked his head sharply, turning away, and his hand shot up, blocking the lens. No, he snapped. I froze, my smile dying on my lips. People nearby turned to look. A couple walking past glanced at us, sensing the tension. David, I lowered the phone. It's just a picture, just for us. I won't post it. I said no, he hissed. He grabbed my wrist hard. Not enough to bruise, but enough to control. He pulled my hand down. Are you crazy? You take a photo, it goes to the cloud. The cloud has metadata, location tags, timestamps. I don't have the cloud set up, I argued, my voice trembling. It's just on my phone. I don't have a single picture of you, not one. If I want to look at you when you're not there, I have nothing. You have your memories, he said, releasing my wrist and adjusting his scarf so it covered more of his face. He looked around nervously, scanning the crowd. We can't take that risk. What if you lose your phone? What if someone steals it? Then they have a photo of us together. Then it gets back to her. You're paranoid, I whispered. Nobody cares about us, David. We're just two people. I am not just two people, he said, his voice cold. I am a man with a lot to lose, and right now you're acting like a liability. A liability. The word hung in the cold air between us. The romantic evening was dead. The fairy lights looked garish now. The red heart looked like a cage. I'm sorry, I said, fighting back tears. I just wanted a memory. Memories are dangerous, he said. Let's go. It's too crowded here. He walked ahead of me. He didn't hold my hand. I walked 3 steps behind him, staring at his back. I realised then that I was a ghost in his life. I left no footprints. I appeared in no photos. If I died tomorrow, there would be zero proof that I had ever known David. I was being erased while I was still alive. The final straw came at the end of the month. My rent was due. The studio apartment was cheap by Toronto standards, but my salary was barely covering the basics. Between the student loans I was still paying off and the cost of living in the city, I was drowning. I was sitting on David's couch staring at my bank app. I had $42 left. Rent was due in 2 days. David came in from the bedroom, buttoning a crisp blue shirt. He looked expensive. His watch alone cost more than my car. He smelled of sandalwood and money. David, I said, my voice small, can we talk? Sure, he said, checking his reflection in the mirror. Make it quick. I have a conference call in 10 minutes. I'm short on rent this month, I said. It was humiliating. I hated asking for money. Just a few $100. I can pay you back next paycheck. He stopped buttoning his cuffs. He turned to look at me. His expression wasn't sympathetic. It was disappointed. Jennifer, he sighed. We talked about this. I know, I said, but you know how much I make and the city is so expensive. I can't simply transfer you money, he said, walking over to the kitchen to pour coffee. My finances are monitored. It's a joint account. If she sees a transfer to Jennifer, the game is over. Do you want that? Can't you take out cash? I asked. You make so much money, David. You wear $1,000 suits and I'm eating instant noodles. He slammed the coffee mug down on the counter. The sound cracked like a whip. You think this is my money? He asked, his voice rising. This is our money. It's tied up in investments, in the mortgage, in her tuition. I am bleeding dry, Jennifer. She takes everything. Her tuition is $40,000 a year. Her living expenses, her therapy. I'm living paycheck to paycheck just to keep this float. He looked at me with wide, frantic eyes. I am drowning in debt to keep her happy so she doesn't ruin me. And now you're asking for money? I thought you were independent. I thought you were different from her. The guilt hit me like a physical blow. He made me feel greedy. He made me feel like a gold digger. I'm sorry, I whispered. I didn't know. Now you know, he said, composing himself. He took a sip of coffee. You need to budget better. Pick up extra shifts. This is the hustle, Jennifer. Christopher, welcome to the city. He checked his watch. I have to take this call. You should go. I'll see you Tuesday. I left his condo feeling like a beggar. I walked to the subway station counting the coins in my pocket. But as I sat on the train watching the dark tunnels rush by, a thought pricked at my mind. He said he was broke. He said he was drowning in debt. But yesterday a package had arrived at the condo. I had seen it on the counter before he hid it. It was from a high-end jewellery store, a small box wrapped in velvet. He hadn't given it to me. Her tuition, her expenses. Was he buying jewellery for the wife he hated, or was there someone else? I pulled out my phone, my cracked, cheap phone, and did something I had promised myself I wouldn't do. I opened Facebook. I searched for his last name. I didn't know his wife's name, but I knew his. Nothing. His profile was locked down tight. No friends list visible. No photos. Just a generic landscape as a cover photo. But then I searched his phone number. Sometimes people link their numbers to old accounts. Nothing. It was like he didn't exist digitally. He was a phantom. I went back to his condo that Tuesday with a heaviness in my chest. I needed to know. While he was in the washroom again, I looked at his phone on the table. It was face down this time. I didn't try to unlock it. I knew that was impossible. Instead, I picked it up. I just wanted to feel the weight of it. And then the screen lit up, not from a text. It was a reminder, a calendar alert. Anniversary dinner, the keg 7 p.m. The date was for next Friday. He had told me next Friday he was going on a business trip to Montreal. I stared at the words. Anniversary dinner. He wasn't going to Montreal. He was staying here with her. Or was he? The notification vanished as the screen went black. I put the phone down exactly where it had been. My hands were shaking. David came out of the bathroom, drying his hair. Ready for bed? He asked, smiling that warm, predatory smile. Yes, I said. I lay next to him that night, listening to his breathing. He fell asleep easily. He always did. The sleep of the guiltless. I looked at the phone on the nightstand, the little black box that held all the answers. And then I noticed something else. The light from the street lamp outside filtered through the sheer curtains, casting a pale glow on the room. David was sleeping on his back, one arm thrown over his head. His pyjama shirt had ridden up slightly. On his side, near his ribs, there was a mark. I held my breath and leaned closer. It wasn't a scratch. Not this time. It was a bruise. A distinct purple bruise, and in the centre of it, bite marks, human bite marks. I pulled back, clamping my hand over my mouth to stop the gasp. That wasn't from a fight, that was from passion, aggressive, animalistic passion. He had been with his crazy wife last weekend. He said it was a chore. He said he hated it. You don't get bitten like that doing a chore. I looked at his face. He looked so peaceful, so holy. The church-going man who prayed before dinner. I realised then that the shadows behind the glass weren't just on his phone. They were in his soul. And I was lying in bed with a monster who was feeding on me piece by piece while saving the real feast for someone else. The confusion was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp terror. I wasn't the girlfriend. I wasn't even the mistress. I was the battery, and he was draining me dry. The smell of frankincense and old polished wood always made me nauseous, but I sat there anyway. Sunday mornings were non-negotiable for David. It was part of the performance. St. Andrew's was one of those massive stone cathedrals in downtown Toronto where the acoustics were designed to make you feel small and God feel very, very large. I sat in the pew next to David, my hands folded in my lap, feeling like an intruder. I was the stain on his pristine Sunday suit. I was the secret sin sitting right next to him in the house of the Lord. David, however, looked like a saint. He was wearing a charcoal grey suit tailored to perfection, the white collar of his shirt stiff and bright against his tan neck. He held the hymnal with a reverence that was almost terrifying to watch. When he sang, his voice was a clear, confident baritone. He closed his eyes during the prayers, his brow furrowed in what looked like deep spiritual concentration. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. I watched his lips move. I watched the way he nodded when the priest spoke about living in the truth and casting aside the shadows of deceit. How did he do it? How did he sit there looking so holy when I knew that less than 12 hours ago he had pushed me up against the wall of his condo hallway, his hands rough, his breath smelling of scotch? How did he reconcile the man who prayed for purity happy with the man who kept a mistress in a studio apartment and a wife in a golden cage. He squeezed my hand. I looked down. His thumb was rubbing my knuckles, a gesture of ownership. He smiled at me, a benevolent, forgiving smile, as if he was the one saving me. Pay attention, Jen, he whispered, his voice warm but commanding. The sermon is about sacrifice. It's important. Sacrifice, that was his favourite word. He loved to talk about how much he sacrificed. He sacrificed his happiness for his sick wife. He sacrificed his money for her tuition. He sacrificed his reputation to keep up appearances. And now he was sacrificing his Sunday morning to save my soul. When the service ended, we walked out into the bright, blinding sunlight of King Street. David shook hands with the priest on the steps. Wonderful message, Father, David said, pumping the man's hand. Truly spoke to me. Good to see you, David. The priest beamed. And who is this? He looked at me. I froze. What was I? The cousin, the colleague, the charity case? This is Jennifer, David said smoothly, not missing a beat. She's new to the city. I'm helping her get settled. She's going through a difficult time. Welcome, Jennifer, the priest said kindly. I forced a smile. Thank you, Father. We walked to the car, the silence between us heavy. David was humming a hymn. You seem distant in there, he said as he unlocked the car. You need to open your heart, Jennifer. You carry too much guilt. God forgives, you know, but you have to ask. I snapped. The hypocrisy was like a physical weight crushing my chest. Does he? I asked, my voice sharp. Does he forgive lying? Does he forgive adultery? David stopped. His hand froze on the door handle. He turned to me slowly, his expression shifting from pious to cold. I am not committing adultery in the eyes of God, he said quietly. My marriage ended years ago. The covenant was broken when she became who she is. I am legally bound, yes, but spiritually, I am a widower. I am a man alone. He believed it. That was the scariest part. He had rewritten the Bible in his head to justify his own narrative. Get in the car, he said. We drove back to the condo in silence. The tension was thick, suffocating. When we got inside, David immediately went to the bedroom. I'm going to change, he announced. It's warm today. I followed him to the doorway. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to apologise. Maybe I wanted to fight. I leaned against the doorframe, watching him. He took off his jacket, hanging it carefully on the valet stand. He loosened his tie, pulling it from his neck with a sigh of relief. Then he began to unbutton his shirt. He turned his back to me to put the shirt in the hamper, and that's when I saw it. The light from the window hit his back, illuminating the skin that was usually hidden beneath layers of expensive cotton and wool. I gasped. The sound escaped my throat before I could stop it. David spun around, clutching his shirt to his chest, his eyes wide. What? He barked, but I was staring at his back, or rather what was on his back. It wasn't just the bite mark on his ribs I'd seen before. His back was a canvas of violence. There were long red welts running down from his shoulders to his mid-back, scratches, deep ones. Some were healing, turning a sickly yellow purple while others looked angry and fresh, scabbing over in bright red lines. They were vertical, parallel, the kind of marks you get when someone digs their nails into you and drags them down hard. David, I whispered, stepping into the room. You're back. Oh my God, you're back. He tried to turn away to hide it, but it was too late. It's nothing, he snapped, reaching for a t-shirt. Nothing? I walked over and grabbed his arm, stopping him. Those are scratches, David. Deep ones. Who did that to you? He ripped his arm away from my grip. His face was flushed, his jaw tight. I told you she's crazy, he shouted. It was the first time he had raised his voice like that. I told you she's violent. You didn't believe me? You think I'm making it up? He turned his back to me again, pointing over his shoulder. This is what I deal with. I went there last weekend to drop off the check. She started screaming. She threw a vase. She clawed at me when I tried to leave. She's a maniac, Jennifer. She dug her nails into me like an animal. He was panting, his chest heaving. He looked like a victim, a battered husband. She did that, I asked, my voice trembling. The marks looked so painful. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you go to the police? That man ruin her. David laughed bitterly. She's sick. You don't send sick people to jail. You take care of them. I took it. I pushed her off, locked the door and left. I bear the marks so you don't have to know how ugly my life really is. He pulled the t-shirt over his head, covering the evidence, covering the scars. I protect you from the truth, he said, his voice muffled by the fabric, and you judge me for it. I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. I had accused him of sleeping with her, of enjoying it, and here he was, literally scarred by her abuse. I'm sorry, I whispered, reaching out to touch his arm. I didn't know it was that bad. I'm so sorry, David. He sighed, letting me touch him. He leaned his forehead against mine. It's okay, he murmured. I'm used to it. Pain is just part of the price I pay. He went into the bathroom to wash his face. I sat on the edge of the bed, my mind racing. She clawed me when I tried to leave. It made sense. It fit the story. The crazy wife, but the violent outbursts. But then my eyes drifted to the valet stand where he had hung his suit trousers. His belt was draped over the chair. I thought about the scratches again. I closed my eyes and tried to visualize them. They started high on the shoulders and dragged down toward the waist. If someone is attacking you from the front, trying to stop you from leaving, they claw at your face, your chest, your arms. To scratch down the back like that, they would have to be embracing you, or you would have to be on top of them. And the bite mark on his ribs, that was on the side. A chill went down my spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. I remembered the bruise I saw last week, and now the scratches. These weren't defensive wounds. These were marks of passion. Violent, aggressive, uncontrolled passion. She didn't scratch him because she was fighting him off, I realised with a sick lurch of my stomach. She scratched him because she was holding on to him. David came out of the bathroom. He looked composed again. The mask was back in place. Oh, I have to go out for a bit, he said casually, checking his watch. I promised the guys at the church committee I'd help with the fundraiser planning. Now? I asked. But it's Sunday afternoon. I thought we were going to watch a movie. Duty calls, he said, grabbing his keys. You stay here, make yourself comfortable. I'll be back by dinner. Maybe we can order sushi. He kissed me on the cheek, a cold, dry peck. Lock the door behind me, he said. I watched him leave. The door clicked shut. I was alone in the condo. Usually I would just sit and watch TV, but today the image of those red lines on his back was burned into my retinas. I stood up and walked to the closet. He said he was going to a church committee meeting. He had changed into jeans and a t-shirt. I looked at the suit he had just taken off, the charcoal grey suit. I reached out and touched the fabric. It was still warm from his body. I checked the pockets. I don't know why. Maybe I was looking for a receipt, a note, anything. The jacket pockets were empty. I checked the trouser pockets. My fingers brushed against something small and paper-like. I pulled it out. It was a receipt, but it wasn't from a gas station or a coffee shop. It was a parking stub from last night, Saturday, 11:45 p.m. Location, the Velvet Lounge. I stared at the slip of paper, the Velvet Lounge. I knew that place. I had heard of it. It wasn't a church hall. It wasn't a family restaurant. It was a high-end club, a place known for private booths and bottle service. He told me last night he was tired. He told me he went to bed early at 10 p.m. I had texted him good night and he hadn't replied until this morning. He wasn't sleeping. He was at a club and he wasn't alone. You don't go to the Velvet Lounge alone. I looked at the scratches in my mind again. She's crazy. She clawed me. His wife was 3 hours away in another city. So, who was scratching down his back at 2 a.m. in Toronto? I dropped the receipt back into the pocket as if it burned me. I stepped back, my heart pounding against my ribs. He wasn't just lying about his wife. He was lying about everything. The crazy wife was a shield. He used her phantom violence to cover up his real perversions. He used her mental illness to explain away the marks of his infidelity. He wasn't a victim of a bad marriage. He was a predator enjoying the best of all worlds. He had the status of a married man, the freedom of a bachelor, the sympathy of a victim, and the adoration of a mistress. And I was the fool sitting in his apartment, waiting for him to come back from a church meeting, while he was probably out washing the scent of another woman off his skin. I walked over to the window, the giant glass wall that looked out over the city. Toronto looked different now. It didn't look like a kingdom of diamonds. It looked like a jagged set of teeth waiting to chew me up. I looked at my reflection in the glass. I looked pale, tired, older than 34. You deserve to be taken care of. That's what he had said. But looking at the reflection, I realised he wasn't taking care of me. He was keeping me in storage, like a winter coat, like a spare tyre. And looking at the scratches on his back, I realised I wasn't the only spare tyre in the garage. David wasn't just cheating on his wife with me. He was cheating on me too. I felt a sudden, violent urge to vomit. I ran to the bathroom, his pristine white marble bathroom, and dry heaved over the sink. When I looked up, splashing water on my face, I saw a bottle of pills on the shelf next to his shaving cream. I had never noticed them before. Maybe he usually hid them. I picked up the orange bottle. The name on the prescription wasn't David. It was Sarah. Sarah, his wife. I looked at the drug name, clonazepam, an anti-anxiety medication, but the date on the bottle was from yesterday. Filled at Shoppers Drug Mart, Toronto, Queen Street West. My blood ran cold. He said she lived 3 hours away. He said she was in the country studying. If she was 3 hours away, why was her prescription filled yesterday at a pharmacy 2 blocks from this condo? The bottle slipped from my numb fingers and hit the marble floor with a loud clatter. She wasn't away. She wasn't in the country. Sarah was here in Toronto. Maybe she had been here the whole time. The plastic bottle spun on the marble floor, a dizzying orange blur that finally rattled to a stop against the base of the vanity. Sarah! Toronto! Yesterday! The silence in the condo was absolute, but inside my head the noise was deafening. It was the sound of 1,000 lies shattering all at once. The crazy wife studying in the countryside, the 3-hour drive, the loneliness, the scratches. I picked up the bottle again, my fingers trembling so hard I could barely read the label. I needed more. I needed proof that wasn't just a name and a date. I knelt on the cold floor and opened the pedal bin under the sink. It was mostly empty. David was meticulous about trash, but at the very bottom, beneath the used tissue, was a crumpled white paper bag, the pharmacy receipt. I smoothed it out on my knee. Patient Sarah Miller, address 42 Oakwood Avenue, The Beaches, Toronto. The Beaches. It was a wealthy, family-oriented neighbourhood on the east side of the city. It was 20 minutes away by car. 20 minutes, not 3 hours. He hadn't been driving to the country every month. He had been driving across town. I stood up, gripping the sink. The face staring back at me in the mirror looked like a stranger. Her skin was grey, her eyes hollow. She looked like the crazy woman David loved to talk about. I had to see. I couldn't just sit here and wait for him to come back with sushi and more lies. I had to see the life he was protecting so violently. I grabbed my coat. I didn't take my bag. I didn't take anything but my phone and the receipt. I walked out of the condo, leaving the door unlocked. I didn't care anymore. The Uber ride was a blur of grey highway and wet pavement. The driver tried to make small talk about the weather, but I just stared out the window, watching the city transform. The glass towers of downtown gave way to brick storefronts, then to tree-lined streets with their expensive SUVs parked in the driveways. We pulled up to 42 Oakwood Avenue. It wasn't a student rental. It wasn't a dormitory. It was a beautiful 2-story Victorian home with a wraparound porch. There was a wreath on the door, a tricycle on the lawn. A tricycle! Is this the place, miss? The driver asked. Just wait, I whispered. Please, keep the meter running. I watched the house. The lights were on inside. Warm, yellow light. I could see movement in the living room window. A sedan pulled into the driveway. A black sedan. My heart stopped. It was David's car. He wasn't at a church committee meeting. He wasn't planning a fundraiser. He was here. I watched, paralysed, as the driver's door opened. David stepped out. He wasn't wearing his suit anymore. He was wearing the jeans and t-shirt he had left the condo in. He looked relaxed. He didn't look like a man under siege. He looked like a man coming home. The front door of the house opened. A woman stepped out onto the porch. She wasn't dishevelled. She wasn't screaming. She was beautiful, with long blonde hair tied back in a messy bun. She was wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweater. She smiled when she saw him, a genuine, tired, happy smile. And then a little boy ran out past her legs. He couldn't have been more than 3 years old. Daddy. I didn't hear the word through the glass of the Uber, but I saw the child's mouth form the shape. I saw the way David's face lit up, a look of pure, unadulterated joy I had never, ever seen him direct at me. He scooped the boy up in his arms, spinning him around. The woman, Sarah, walked down the steps and kissed David. It wasn't a peck. It was the kiss of familiarity, of partnership, of love. He put his arm around her waist and they walked back up the stairs together, laughing. The door closed. The lock clicked. The crazy wife, the violent maniac, the loveless marriage. It was all a script. A perfectly rehearsed play designed to keep me in my place, to keep me sympathetic, to keep me compliant. The scratches on his back weren't from violence. They were from passion, the bite marks, the hidden phone. It wasn't because he was afraid of her. It was because he didn't want to lose this. He didn't want to lose his perfect family life. I was simply the toy he played with when the domestic bliss became too boring. I was the dark room where he could be someone else. Miss, the driver asked again, sounding concerned. Are you okay? I looked at the house one last time. It looked like a postcard of the American dream, and I was the dirt on the shoe of the man who owned it. Take me back, I whispered. Take me back to the condo. The ride back was silent. I didn't cry. I think I had forgotten how to cry. I felt cold, numb, like my blood had been replaced with ice water. When I got back to the condo, he wasn't there yet, obviously. He was still playing Daddy across town. I sat on the sofa. I didn't turn on the lights. I watched the sun go down over the city, watching the skyscrapers turn into silhouettes against a purple sky. The view I had once thought was romantic now looked like the bars of a cell. The key turned in the lock at 7:30 p.m. David walked in carrying a plastic bag of takeout. He flipped on the lights, startling me. Hey, he said, sounding cheerful. Why are you sitting in the dark? I got the sushi. The meeting ran late. Sorry. Father Thomas can really talk. He walked into the kitchen, unpacking the food. He didn't notice my silence, or maybe he just didn't care. David, I said. My voice sounded strange, hollow. He paused, a soy sauce packet in his hand. He looked over the counter at me. Yeah? How is your son? The silence that followed was heavy, instantaneous and suffocating. David didn't drop the packet. He didn't gasp. He froze, his body going perfectly still, like a predator sensing a shift in the wind. He slowly put the soy sauce down. He wiped his hands on a napkin. What did you say? He asked, his voice devoid of emotion. I saw him, I said, standing up. My legs felt weak, but I forced them to hold me. I found the receipt. I went to the house. I saw Sarah. I saw the tricycle. I saw you kiss her. I took a breath, letting the anger finally bubble up. There is no crazy wife, is there? There is no mental illness. There is no separate bedroom. You have a family. You have a child. David stared at me. His face was blank. He wasn't panicking. He was calculating. He walked around the island and leaned against it, crossing his arms. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and disappointment. You went to my house, he stated. You stalked my family. You lied to me, I screamed. For months you used me. You told me she was a monster. You told me you were alone. I am alone, he said calmly. In here, he tapped his chest. Do you think having a wife and a kid makes you happy, Jennifer? It makes you tired. It makes you bored. It makes you a servant to a routine that never ends. He walked toward me. I stepped back. I didn't lie about how I feel, he said. I feel trapped there. With you, I feel free. You are my escape. You are the only place I can be myself. You're a sociopath, I whispered. You have a son, and you spend your money on this condo, on expensive suits, while you tell me you're broke, while I eat instant noodles. I provide for you, he said, his voice hardening. I gave you a job. I gave you this place to stay on weekends. I gave you affection. What did you have before me? A dead-end life in a dead-end town with a dead-end ex-husband. He stopped right in front of me. He smelled of the same cologne he wore when he hugged his wife. You need me, Jennifer, he said softly. I'm leaving. I said, I'm going to tell her. I'm going to tell everyone. David laughed. It was a dry, humourless sound. Go ahead, he said, and tell her. She won't believe you. I've already insulated her. She knows I have a stalker at work, a crazy woman who is obsessed with me. If you show up, you're just proving my story. He took a step closer, towering over me. And where will you go? He asked. You have no money. You have no friends here. The job you have, I got you that job. One phone call and it's gone. The lease on your studio, it requires a guarantor. Guess who pulled strings for that? My blood ran cold. You wouldn't. I built your life here, Jennifer, he said, and I can dismantle it in 5 minutes. He reached out and touched my cheek. I flinched, but I didn't pull away. I couldn't. You aren't the victim here, he whispered, his thumb stroking my skin. You are a participant. You knew something was wrong. You saw the signs, but you stayed because you liked the view. You liked the attention. You liked the idea of saving me. He was right. God help me. He was right. I had ignored the red flags because I didn't want to go back to the darkness. So here is the choice. David said, stepping back and gesturing to the door. You can leave. You can go back to being nobody with nothing, sleeping on a bus station bench tonight, or he gestured to the sushi on the counter. You can sit down. We can eat dinner. We can watch a movie and we can pretend this conversation never happened. You can be my sanctuary, my secret, and I will take care of you. He looked at me with those dark, calm eyes. What's it going to be, Jen? I looked at the door. It was unlocked. I could walk out. I could go to the police. I could go to a shelter. I could fight. But I was tired. I was so tired. The cold wind of Toronto was howling outside the glass. The city looked vast and indifferent. I looked at David, the monster, the lover, the provider. I looked at the sushi. I felt the last shred of my dignity dissolve, leaving only a cold, hard pragmatism. I walked past him. I walked to the kitchen island. I picked up the chopsticks. Is there spicy tuna? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. David smiled. It wasn't a smile of victory. It was the smile of a man who knew his pet had finally been broken in. Yes, he said, walking over to pour the wine. Your favourite. He locked the door. The deadbolt slid home with a heavy, final thud. I sat on the stool, looking out at the city lights. They didn't look like diamonds anymore. They looked like the bars of a golden cage. And I knew with a terrifying certainty that I would never, ever fly away.